Debuting at the Interstate Park in Queens, New York in 1900, the Grand American World Trapshooting Championship has grown from a mere 20 competitors to more than 5,800. Over the years, names like Annie Oakley, Roy Rogers, and John Philip Sousa have been a part of this historic tournament, rife with tradition and history. This storied event has evolved into the most prestigious shooting tournament in the world. Only the modern marathon has more participants in a single day of competition than the Grand American, a place where one good stretch of shooting can enshrine any competitor into the annals of this legendary event.
We are in Sparta, Illinois, which is the home grounds for the Amateur Trapshooting Association's Grand American. And the Grand American has over 3,500 shooters. So it is by far the largest clay target event in the world.
The Grand American started as a live bird, live pigeon shoot in the late 1890s. And it became the Grand American at Inanimate Targets in 1900. It was hosted at several locations around the United States until 1924. And then it was moved to Vandalia, Ohio, and it stayed there till 2005. And at one point, there were 8,000 shooters that shot at the Grand American. The tournament is considered the pinnacle. If you win at the Grand American, you are indeed a national champion. Any trophy, you're considered a national champion.
The significance coming to the Grand every year as a shooter is really one of, for me, history, knowing all of the great shooters that have shot here before, all of the champions that have been here, but also too, it's a chance to put your name in the history books.
The Grand is basically, I tell people all the time, it's kind of like the Super Bowl of the World Series. I mean, everybody from every state comes to the Grand to compete against the best. They want to win at the Grand.
The Grand is the culmination for the ATA, the Amateur Trapshooting Association's grand finale, where you have people from all across the world coming to enjoy trap shooting and breaking clays. So for me, it represents, it's fun, it's enjoyable.
The Grand represents, it's that culmination of all the practice and all the shoots we've been to all year. It's all leading up to this. You know, we come down here, this is the big one for us, so we better be ready to go every single year.
Our goal, you guys that shoot with Winchester, well, everybody is to try to win one of the rings at the Grand, one of the championship events. It's very hard to do.
The clay target sports are pretty unique, and the Grand American has a special place in a lot of shooters' hearts. It's one of the sports where you can just easily be squatted with the best shooters in the game.
You have the best of the best shooting next to your average shooter. I think that's one of the coolest things here at the Grand that is unlike any other sport. You can't go and stand next to some of the best golfers and play around with them, but here at the Grand, you get to walk along them side by side, shake their hands, meet them, and then an hour later you might be on the same squad with them. And that is something that this sport offers that no other sport can.
You can go down in history by having one very good day.
The build up to the Grand American is just an unreal experience, just because everyone's been putting in such hard work throughout the summer trying to improve and become the best shooter that they possibly can, and everyone coming to the Grand American knows that everyone there has a chance of winning, and it's just an unreal experience to know that you're shooting against the best shooters in the world and seeing what you can do compared to them.
we're very proud of the fact that this is the 125th Grand American, the anniversary, and there have been a Grand American every year for 125 years, despite the challenges that the United States went through and solved and mastered through those 125 years. We've always been able to have a Grand American, even during world wars, pandemics, and economic downturns. There's always been a Grand American.
The Grand American is the largest event in clay target sports. There are over 4.5 million clay targets and ammunition shot during that event at registered birds.
The target that we use here at the Grand American is the Orange Dome AA target. The AA target is the gold standard for trap shooting, and the color that we use here is the Orange Dome, which is probably the best target here for the Midwest, with a slight green background and then a lot of sky. That target really shows up, lets the shooters get a good visual picture of the target, and that black rim really gives them an edge that they can lock on to shoot the high scores here at the Grand.
Oh yeah, White Flyer in Winchester is like not just here for the U.S. Open. They're the Grand. They're Missouri. They're everywhere. All the Grands, all the shoots everywhere. Pretty much it's White Flyer and Winchester.
Winchester's our official ammunition, and White Flyer's our official target. We're very thankful for this relationship, particularly because we feel like Winchester's a local manufacturer. They're not too far from our headquarters in Sparta or from the World Shooting Complex.
Winchester and White Flyer go hand in hand because they're the most trusted brands within the recreational shooting sports. Not only are we committed to providing made in the USA products to our customers, but we're also committed to the growth of the recreational shooting sports.
Winchester's been a part of the Grand for about 100 years. There's just no way that you can think about the Grand American without seeing that red Winchester and that horse and rider. It is just a part of the Grand American and the ATA.
So when we had the opportunity to come to Sparta, Illinois for the Grand American moving here, one of the biggest comments coming from Vandalia, Ohio, which was home for the Grand American for a long time, was something bigger. Bigger, better, more spread out. Everybody didn't want to feel so cramped from the camping to the parking. They wanted a better vendor row, and Sparta delivered on that. They built a brand new facility, taking all that into consideration. In Sparta and the World Shooting Complexes, there's no other complex like it on the earth.
This is a magnificent facility. There's nothing else obviously like it in the world. It would be very difficult to replace this facility today. The trap line's 3.5 miles long. There's 120 some traps here. 600 shooters can be on the line at the same time. There's 1,000 campsites, 4,000 parking spaces. It's just unbelievable. There's people that have shot here for years that still don't realize how big this facility is. It is magnificent. It is trap shooting heaven. Well, during the Grand American, it's 17 days now, the AIM Championship and the Grand American, and we prepare for months before that, and when it does come all together, a lot of the work's already done, but I do have a tremendous sense of pride in this staff, in the staff that puts on the Grand American, the management staff all the way to the line workers outside. And they all have a tremendous amount of pride in their impact on this, on the Grand American, on the event, because they're very proud of this area. Most of them are from Southern Illinois, and this is a big deal in Southern Illinois. It's a huge deal. And there's people that have been working the Grand American here since the first year it was here in 2006. So we have a tremendous amount of experience, and there's very little that they can't handle. And I just stand back and watch and smile. The position that I hold as Executive Director of the ATA is my dream job. When I became Executive Director, I was overjoyed, and I still am. It's meant a lot to me, it meant a lot to my family, because they knew how involved I was in trap shooting, and have been. I've been highly involved in tournaments and in managing tournaments, And to me, my role in the Grand American as executive director and the U.S. Open here is I'm in my element. I love running trap shoots, and I love that more than sitting in my office over in our building. But I'm really in my element. I'm around people that I have a lot in common with, and it's been a wonderful ride.
Winchester Life is brought to you by Winchester Repeating Arms, Walkers Ear and Eye Protection, Birchwood Casey, Winchester Safes, Folds of Honor, Winchester Pet, White Flyer, America's Best, and by Winchester Ammunition, the American legend. This segment of Winchester Life is brought to you by Folds of Honor, providing life-changing scholarships to families of fallen or disabled military and first responders. Winchester Pet. And by White Flyer, America's Best. Firmly planted on the grounds of the World Shooting and Recreational Complex in Sparta, Illinois, the Trapshooting Hall of Fame permeates an aura of tradition and excellence. Historical photos, memorabilia, and relics from the past act as a time warp, each telling a story of some of the most influential trap shooters and events from one of our nation's most storied pastimes.
I'm Terry Waldron. I'm the director of the Trapshooting Hall of Fame and Museum and Reference Library. We're in the Trapshooting Hall of Fame and Museum, roughly a 4,000 square foot area. We have items from the 1800s to present day, from the early days of glass ball shooting to the first throwers, to the first mechanized throwers, and then of course all the guns we have on display. All the guns except for a handful belong to somebody in the Hall of Fame. We have one that was used in the 1912 Olympics. We have a couple of prototype guns. But yeah, people are very impressed. Like I said, it's laid out really well. You can get up close to stuff. The display cases are constructed so that it's plexiglass all the way around. You can easily walk around and look at things. Bat Thomas, that was his nickname, was a wheelchair shooter, and he had a couple of custom-made Ludics. Well, this one has a 56-inch barrel and weighs a ton because he shot with it up against his sternum. And so he has all these brass weights. On the end, it's all brass. So it weighs, I think, almost 23 pounds. One of the collections we got was Vic Reindeer's collection of old shell boxes. And we had them in a display case, but we had to just stack them up so you really couldn't see much of anything. So I had this case built by the high school shop class, and that way we've got room, and it's actually, I filled it up now. We did have some room in there, but I've acquired some more old shell boxes. But being an art person and being a graphic artist, I love the look of the boxes are really neat. And we got some, older ones, and you can see the progression and stuff. Interesting photo here. It says Asheville Gun Club team, winners of the Champion Glass Ball Badge of the South at Asheville, North Carolina, July 5th, 1881. So I'm assuming these gentlemen are all Civil War vets. Since it's North Carolina, they probably fought for the losing side, so, but that's just a great photo. Like all these old ones here from different grands and different shoots where you can see the outfits. Everybody always dressed up. For a while it was bowlers, and then it was straw hats. often three-piece wool suits, not like you see now with shorts and t-shirts. We always get new stuff. That's what's interesting. And every year during the Grand, without pause, someone will come in and say the magic words, which are, I noticed I've got something you don't have. Would you be interested in it? And without knowing what it is, my automatic response is, yeah, what is it? This is something interesting I just came across the other day in the back room looking through some storage items, and it's a photo, an original photo of shooters at the first Grand American in 1900 at the Interstate Park in Long Island. This is the gentleman that won, and I don't know who the lady is. There's no identifying things on here, but obviously a very old photo, so I'm going to get it framed up in time for the Grand and stuff. So it's interesting to just keep running across stuff in the back. And attached to the back was a negative. This is our Herb Parsons display, the showman shooter from Somerville. If you can zoom in here, this is one of my favorite pics right here. He traveled around the country. I think he had two different ones of these cars, and on the top were these giant shells, and they were actually speakers that were hooked up to his little PA system. So he would go out and do this presenting, and he'd trick shots where he would throw vegetables up in the air and shoot them, and he was always talking, very positive talk. If you've ever watched the Showman Shooter video.
Winner of the Grand American Professional Championship in 1954. And of course, that's winning the World Series of trap shooting.
I want you to notice the striking power of trap and skeet shells when shot or a block that's been hit with one. So watch this block. Now let's try another one. So we'll just toss one out here and like that.
Herb's specialty is exhibition shooting.
Pick up 5 and here they are. Now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, it's just as important to be a good sportsman as it is to be a good shot.
And he would always say something like, if you teach a young man to hunt, you won't hunt for him when he's older. That was one of his little catchphrases. But we've got a couple of his shotguns here. They're chromed up one and stuff. But he was quite a character, but he really promoted the sport, the shooting sport, and was a big Winchester guy.
This segment of Winchester Life is brought to you by Walkers, Birchwood Casey, and by Winchester Safes. This segment of Winchester Life is brought to you by Winchester Ammunition, the American legend, and by Winchester Repeating Arms.
Here we've got this is the history of targets. Obviously we don't have any live birds laying around, but that was the precursor up until the 1900s. And even in the 1800s, the traveling shooters like Captain Bogardus and Annie Oakley, those people were using glass balls. They originated in England, I think. And so there are different manufacturers. They are a big collector's item. Some are worth a lot more because of the names that are on them, like Bogardus had his own line of balls and stuff. But what's interesting was a couple of these have some sawdust in them. People were still used to shooting birds and having the feathers go all over, so it was more exciting. So they would stuff these with sawdust or feathers or pieces of paper so that it would do something more exciting. And then we have these are the first clay targets. Lugowski, who's in the Hall of Fame, I guess because he created the clay target. These were the first ones made, and then of course other companies jumped on the bandwagon. This one right here that has these little ridges, and it looks to me like it would spin like a little flying saucer. And I don't know what it would do, if it would whistle or if it would be more stable when it went up. I have no idea. It'd be nice to get a copy of that made and throw it and see what it does, but I don't want to throw that one. But there were a lot of companies like this one here that came out with ones that were for practice. This is a metal one, so you could throw that up and shoot it several times without having to worry about breaking. Then they made smaller ones. We have the one that, like the mosquito targets, which were little bitty ones that were another practice ones that had a small thrower. Kerala Pop Hikes is the gentleman that won the first of the modern Grand Americans in 1900. This was the Winchester model 1897 that he used. This guy won the gold, James J. Graham. We have the shotgun he used. The gentleman, the great-grandson, I think it was, that brought it in, the family had his gold medal, and he said, "My sister has it." Well, I talked to a gentleman a couple years later who knew him, and he said, well, the sister's little girl took it to school for show and tell, and it disappeared. So somewhere there's a 1912 gold medal. Charlie Sparrow Young was a legendary shooter. He was at the 1900 Grand, and this is a gun that he actually shot up here, which looks like he made it in his basement. This is the one he designed. They had the company from 1902 to 1904. It's the one that held 3 shells, and it was a very interesting mechanism and very modern looking. But the company went bankrupt. I think it was, I don't know if the people just didn't like the design or they thought it was crazy. Why would you want a gun to eject it? Why don't you want to load it yourself? I have no idea, but it didn't make it. But it's really a neat gun. We don't have a lot of actual Annie Oakley stuff because even at the start, as a young girl, she was providing for her family. That's how she became such a great shot, was shooting game and selling it to the local hotel and stuff. But even throughout her career, when she was traveling with the Wild West show, she would be given all kinds of things, you know, from princes and kings and stuff, and she would usually sell them to have money for her family. We card this last year. It's a genuine target ball that has her initials stamped on it, and it was full of confetti, because you have to realize that when Annie would be performing, she'd basically be in the middle of a football field, and for people to be able to see a glass ball broken, you wouldn't see much, so she filled hers full of confetti, so it would be like red, white, and blue confetti, and they go, oh, she did it. And we have some tobacco cards. Tobacco cards, we see that with baseball, like the Honus Wagner card that's worth so much money, but they had tobacco cards for some of the big shooters, Bogardus and Parker and Annie Oakley. We have some of those. Those are authentic. This is a collection of items belonging to Leila Hall Frank. She was the first living female inducted into the Hall of Fame in '69. We have her shooting vest, the gun. The gun case is interesting because when the museum was back in Ohio, they got a phone call one day and somebody said, "Does Leila Frank anybody in shooting?" And they went, "Well, yeah, she's in the Hall of Fame and stuff." Well, I found this leather gun case in the dumpster behind my apartment, and didn't know if anybody wanted it. And it's like, well, yeah, it'd be great to have it. Is there anything else in the dumpster? And the guy looked out his window and said, "The trash truck just left." So if there's anything else of hers in there, we don't know anything else about it. But not only was she an avid shooter, she was a painter. We have 3 of her paintings on the wall over here. There are a lot of lady shooters out there, and it's a sport. And I think it's oddly enough, for some reason, we have up here all the people who've won the Grand American Handicap. We've yet to have a female, because it could be a woman or a girl, any age, to win it, although they've been involved in shoot-offs and they've come close. So I expect any year now to have a female picture up on the wall, but hadn't happened yet. We got Captain Bogardus was a trick shooter that I mentioned before, at the same time as Annie Oakley and stuff. And his big thing was he'd shoot like 1,000 targets in an hour and whatever. And he would hire local kids to throw glass balls up in the air. And after a while, they weren't going up as high or as far or whatever. So to try to get something more consistent, he built this, which is the first glass ball thrower. This was a spring out of a wagon. and then he could stake the wooden part down in the ground so it wouldn't move. He pushed it down, it kind of cocked, and then he'd pull the string and it would fling it, so it would at least be consistent. And then other companies, the Mole Company was the first one that came out and thought, well, we can do doubles, so they can throw them this way and one that way if you want to shoot doubles or whatever. I'm not a trap shooter. I'm a retired art teacher, but I love the history of the sport, and the more I've dealt with things and setting up exhibits and everything, the more I've come to enjoy, looking into the past. You want people to feel like it was worth coming in here, and we get nothing but positive comments. It's really, they didn't know the place existed, or usually it's just, it was fantastic to see so much history in one place. The most positive thing for me is that people come out of here and they've found something new, they've learned something they didn't know, or they've seen something they didn't think they would see.
For 125 years, the Grand American has embodied what it means to live a Winchester life. It's been a beacon of light and stood the test of time as an anchor for countless generations of families, creating memories that have shaped their lives forever.